glare is bad. We're never gonna wear the glasses for a video. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna have to wait till it's nighttime. So, gymnastics, weightlifting, two of my favorite things. I have a hot take, and my hot take is that gymnastics does not translate to weightlifting as well as you may think it does. Now, of course, we have the big, obvious translation, and that is mobility. Gymnasts are very flexible. You stretch every day. It is a big component of the sport. So if you're a gymnast and you become a weightlifter, you basically have unlocked all of the mobility that you need right off the bat. Whereas most people who start weightlifting, they have tons of restrictions and they have to spend a lot of time working on those. So the question is, what does not translate well? Why does gymnastics not translate to weightlifting as well as another sport like football may? I got three big reasons. I'm gonna start with the one that most people may not expect, and that is over efficiency. As an Olympic weightlifter, your goal is to make your snatch and clean and jerk numbers as high as possible. Now, those numbers are capped by your absolute strength. So let's say my best squat is 200 kilograms. Probably can't clean and jerk 200 kilograms. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. If my 1 rep max back squat is 130 kilos and then I clean and jerk 135 kilos in a competition, my back squat max probably isn't 130 kilos anymore. So what does this have to do with gymnastics? Well, as a gymnast going into weightlifting, you will likely be more mobile, you will likely be able to absorb technique and cues much better than a true beginner would. So in this regard, you will learn the lifts relatively fast. It's a huge benefit. Early on, you have very good efficiency and you may carry that with you throughout your career in the sport. Now, if your clean and jerk max is close to your back squat max, what do you think that means for your training volume? If I do heavy singles every day on clean and jerk, and my clean jerk is very close to my best back squat, it is going to tax my body so much. I am much more likely to be injured in terms of getting volume on the Olympic lifts. Your training has to change because of this. So for example, I myself have a knee injury, and that's because I would squat too often, squat too heavy, and so now I can't even snatch or clean and jerk every day. I have to snatch once a week and clean and jerk once a week. If I was healthy, I'd be able to do it a lot more, but even then I still do it less than some of the other athletes. I train with someone who is a very good 67 lifter, and he snatches and clean and jerks almost every day, and I know my body could not handle that whatsoever. Now, everyone's different. This is my unique case, but I would say overall, if you are a more efficient lifter, doing the Olympic lifts will tax your body a lot more than someone who has no efficiency in the lift or has no technical mastery. So you have to keep that in mind when you approach training and when you're figuring out your programming. Coaches do have to keep this in mind. There isn't much benefit to doing the Olympic lifts over and over and over if you're pretty proficient with them and your strength numbers are super low. That's just the reality. You risk injury by doing this, so your alternative is to either reduce your volume on the lifts or reduce intensity. So doing them much lighter, working on the little technical things versus going super heavy where it's going to beat up your body every time you lift heavy. And that leads me into my second point, which is your leg strength. As a gymnast going into weightlifting, your leg strength starts basically from scratch. Now, there's a little bit of nuance in that, and that's because gymnasts have different events they compete in, and women's versus men's is very different as well. Men have 6 events they compete in, women have 4 events they compete in. 2 of the events for both genders are leg dominant events. Those 2 events are the floor exercise and vault, 2 of the most iconic events in gymnastics. Most of what you are doing is bounding, so having a slight bend in the knees and then extending through very aggressively, very explosive. That translates well to weightlifting, but you never really go down into a full squat. So you're not training anything below a few degrees when you are doing these gymnastics events. Different coaches will train their athletes differently as well. So some gymnastics coaches may have their athletes do squats as a conditioning exercise, but a lot of coaches don't. My coach had us do squats like once a month. And because women have 4 events and 2 of them are more leg dominant, they tend to have a higher training volume of legs than men do. So that is something to keep in mind when you're comparing men or women who are gymnasts going into weightlifting. In addition to this, the 2 major components of weightlifting are technical mastery and strength. And because of this, you have to keep in mind that gymnastics places a higher emphasis on technical mastery. Doing technique work is something that you can put a lot more volume into over strength. There's kind of a point of diminishing returns with strength, where if you do it too much, you work on it too much, you risk injury, as well as you just not really making progress anymore. Your nervous system kind of just taps out. There's a little bit more science behind that, but we'll just leave it there for now. Point number 3, mobility does not equal stability. I could be super hypermobile, But if I go deep into a squat with 100 kilos over my head and I just fall apart like a wet noodle because I don't have any strength in those positions, there's no point in being that flexible. You have to keep in mind that there is a big difference between being flexible and being strong in a flexible position. Stability outweighs the importance of mobility by a great amount. You do have this sort of requirement in terms of mobility for weightlifting to be able to complete the lifts effectively, but there comes a point where extra mobility doesn't really help you. And I've heard coaches say that too much mobility actually makes you weaker. I don't know if there's science behind that, if that's actually the case. I have a feeling that's not truly the case, but again, it does come down to stability and strength in your positions. If you are not strong in the bottom of the squat, if you're not strong overhead, even in this super flex position, then there's no point in having that flexibility. You have to build strength in those positions. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, this is just my hot take. Of course, there are a few things that make gymnastics really good for weightlifting if you were a gymnast before and are moving on to weightlifting, and I'm sure I'll make a video on that at some point, but I wanted to point out these things because I have never heard someone point them out. They are important considerations in you coaching someone who was a gymnast and is becoming a weightlifter. You have to keep these things in mind because every athlete who comes from a certain sport has their strengths and their weaknesses, and if you're not keeping that in mind, you're not being a very aware coach. And if you're the athlete and you're self-coaching, you definitely have to keep these things in mind. You have to know what you'll be good at and what you won't be, so that you know what to put your focus in, because working on your weaknesses is probably the most important thing you can do as an athlete. Alright, thank you guys for watching this. I hope you enjoyed, I hope it was informational and you got something from it. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I'll see you guys in the next one.